Hello, guys. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience that I had with the audio, with the other slides that I sent to your emails. But well, I tried to fix it, and I'm here again, willing to solve that problem. Okay. In today's lesson, we're gonna talk about a book, which name is Classroom Management for Middle and High School Teachers. Okay, the authors are Edmund Emmer and Caroline Everson. Of course, they are North American, and they have an interesting information here, which is helpful for the development of the course. I would like you to have your notebook and or agenda or the computer where you are, right? So you're able to make some notes, which are going to be useful for your reflection at the end of this lesson. Okay, let's start with the information. Very good. Here we are. The book is divided into chapters. We're going to cover, I guess, chapter number 1 and chapter number 2. In chapter number 1, we have here organizing your classroom and materials. And here the two authors refer to the organization of the classroom. And it refers probably to the time that we spend before or preparing the classroom to receive students in the beginning of the year. Here there are some rules and some tips actually that we can take into account for this organization and that actually influence classroom management as well. Here we find some ideas like, for example, high traffic areas free of congestion. The idea is not to have materials all over the places in the classroom. In the case you're responsible for a classroom, okay? We also need to take into account that your students should be organized in the classroom. They must be in a round table or in rows, as we usually do it in a traditional way, but that's going to depend on the plan that you have for the class, okay? It says here frequently used materials, supplies easily accessible, right? So do not hide those materials you're going to use in the class. If you're going to use posters, flashcards, video beam, tape recorder, whatever you're going to use, try to have it close to you so you don't spend time looking for them at the time of the class. The last aspect, I would really remark on it. It says students easily see the board, right? Try to make sure all the students can easily see the board. Try to place students, those tall students, put them or place them at in the back of the class. Do not place them in the beginning of the rows, because that's going to be probably an obstacle for some students, and that promotes a disruption in the classroom. So this is more related to the organization of the class. Okay, let's continue. In the same chapter, we have organizing your classroom and materials. And here we have some suggestions for arranging your classroom. First, the authors mention bulletin boards or walls, right, that we can actually take into account for organizing the information, and it could be also the rules of the classroom in a visible place in the classroom. It says here that you can post daily assignments, right? You can actually have students to do this. You don't need to do it every time, but you can have students who will remind the rest of the class the assignments they have due for next days. It says here rules. I already mentioned that. You can actually work with them on constructing the rules of the class. It's not that you impose the rules, but work with the students. It could be in the first week or first weeks, um, like creating the rules of the class. You may include 2 or 3 that you want them to to obey, or to, like, in a mandatory way to achieve. Okay, then it says reward class of the month. You can actually have in that bulletin board the student of the month, the student of the week, the student of the period, whatever you want to use there also to remind students. It says here that um, in the student's desk, avoid students with backs to instructional area. Make sure all students are looking at the board. And there is another situation here. In your desk, the teacher's desk, make sure students do not cover or surround you when you're actually, let's say that, scoring an activity or checking up an activity. So students like surround you as a teacher. You need to have the visibility of the class. Okay, you need to have the control of the class. Sometimes you're sitting on your desk, they are working. Some students, some of them come up to you because they want you to check their activities. Make sure they do not surround you when that happens. And try to find a spot in the class or in the school to storage your supplies, your resources. Okay? Okay, let's continue. Okay, continuing with the information, here we have a very interesting term that I would like you to look for further after the lesson. And it says here, if you have to float, do you have any idea what is floating in a classroom? Well, this term is related to our context because it refers to the teachers who move from one class to the other one. Probably when you teach in a grade, let's say 7th, and you need to go to 7th A, 7th B, 7th C, and 7th D, for example, or probably different grades. That's what we call floating, okay? When you move from one class to the other one. Probably it doesn't happen in the first grades in primary because they have teachers all the time in the same classroom. They do not float. But usually English teachers, they do float. And we need to take into account some aspects in when floating. It says familiarize yourself with the room. Try to do that in advance. Do not expect till the first day of classes for you to look for the classroom. Okay. Try to arrange a project for daily use. If you have a projector, that would be great if you arrange it. Of course, if you have time to do it before the class. Okay. If you don't, because that's going to help you and make things easier in classroom management when you do not spend time connecting or plugging the cables, because that's going to be like a kind of time. A regular space for the board for assignments. Most teachers, for example, in primary, they remind students assignments on a corner of the board. They remind what they have to do for tomorrow, or probably in the next few days. Well, it says also storage space for materials that cannot be carried out with you every day. What things we cannot carry out every day? The tape recorder, some posters. So what we do is to leave them on the classroom where we're gonna work with them. It says here, try to get a card. Well, Some teachers do it, but you need to buy the card. Okay, so you can carry notebooks, students' books, workbooks. In this case, that we're going to teach English, but that's part of an individual decision. Okay, finally, in this slide, it says assign early arriving students the task of preparing the room. Okay, if you can do it, to have students erase boards, set up the recorder, arrange chairs before you get to the classroom. That's gonna make things easier in classroom management. Okay, next. Well, guys, here we have chapter number 2, and it refers to choosing rules and procedures and why rules and procedures are needed in the classroom. We have been talking about rules since the beginning of the semester, because rules, like in some way, they set the classroom environment in the classroom. Students know where are they going to head the class. They know what is the purpose of the class. Okay. That also we can say here, because it says rules identify general expectations or standards best when positively stated. Okay, and procedures communicate expectations for behavior applied to a specific activity. That is also related, for example, when you are going to start your class and you give the students the objective of the class. Of course, it is the same as stating or setting rules in the beginning of the period of the year or of the class itself. Planning classroom rules and procedures. More than getting to know the rules of the class, it's also getting to know the consequences they will have in the case they do not fulfill the expectations you have or you expect them to do in the class. It says here identify school rules and procedures. Actually, you can work with them to have them visible in the classroom. Before we mentioned the bulletin board, it could be in the bulletin board or it could be in a different space. And here we have around 5 sufficient to cover most behavior. It says bring all needed materials to class. That could be a rule. Okay. Be in your seat and ready to work when the bell rings. In some schools, they do not use a bell. They use songs to change classes, or for teachers to float from one class to the other one. Respect and be polite to all people. That's something that we need to work with students every class, every time, in every activity. Okay. Respect other people's property. Also interesting to work with them, and I expect your students to come up with this rule when you construct them. And finally, we have obey all school rules, and this is connected to what the school is pretending with the Manual de Convivencia. Okay? Continuing with chapter number 2, we have choosing rules and procedures. And here we're going to talk about the general procedures that we may have in a classroom. It says here beginning of period. I would say beginning of class. Okay, what do you have to do in terms of classroom management to control students' behavior? And here we have some suggestions that we can actually make them suitable for each of the contexts we will be facing. Here we have first attendance. Use a sitting chart and keep track of missing work. Recommendation from me, it would be like identifying the empty chairs and asking the rest of the class who is not there, so you can get to know who's missing in your class. So you don't need to go on the 40 names to get to know who's not in your class. And you save some time. The absences, you need to write them down, the names and date, and the reasons why your students are not in the class. Okay, and that's something that you need to have a record, because sometimes the evidence is going to be useful for you and a support in the process. Okay, third eye students, be consistent and sign in sheet. And this is something I want to remark. on this information. I would like to hear about your position, right? What is your point of view? What is the view of seeing this situation? Tardai students refers to those students who come up to your class late, okay, after the ring bell or the music sounded, okay. I have my own point of view here. Actually, I have shared some strategies that I used to apply when I used to teach in high school, and it's related to in some way to an academic issue, but at the end, it's actually addressed to teaching students the value of punctuality. But I would like to hear about you. What would you do with those students who come up late to your class, to show up late? Please make sure you include your opinion in the reflection you're going to write after this lesson. Then it says expected behavior, warm-up questions at the beginning of period, copy a line. Okay, you may actually talk to them about the expected behavior, about the way you want them to behave in the class. Leaving the room, make sure you have clear why or when your students are allowed to get out of the room for some reasons, emergencies or going to the bathroom or asking for some materials or doing a favor to you. Okay, so make sure they have that clear, so there is no like an argument in the middle of the class of why yes, why not. Okay, use of material and equipment, teachers and students materials, and end of period cleanup of materials and reminders of upcoming words. End of period, end of the class. Okay, leave everything clean, erase the board, leave the classroom organized. Try not to limit the time of your class. Try to finish your class like 5 minutes before, so you organize the whole class for the next teacher. And that will be something that every teacher should do. Okay, some teachers don't do it. They leave you the board all written, or they leave you the class disorganized. But that would be something nice of you to do. In this, we're almost done. Here we have procedures during seat work and instruction. And here we have, I would take the most important aspects here. Referring to participation, it is important to have clear with your students the way you want them to participate. Is it raising hands? They need to wait till you call them, or any other strategies that you have. Some teachers use like a sign, so they raise it up, and that means that they want to participate. Well, it's up to you. There's like plenty of strategies that you may use for students to participate. And here we have also note taking. Okay, this is something that you may actually be. It could be part of your roles in the class. Like they always take notes of what's happening in the class. It's up to you. It's up to students as well. But it's a good strategy, so they are connected to the class every time. Very good. In this final slide, because up to here, we're going to leave this first part. It refers to group work. And this is something I would like you to start thinking about. Every time we think of a group work, we just think of 3, 4, 5, or 6 students getting together and getting something done. Okay, but there is more than this when we refer to group work. There are actually different theories that tell us that we can work in group, but with different methodologies. And this is what we're going to do next week. I will be sending to your emails the instructions for this work. But so far, I can tell you, like, we can actually have we can assign students to work in groups. That we need to take into account that the group is well balanced or balanced. The group is well balanced, like excellent students with those students who do not behave well, or those students who are more skilled at the subject. Okay, and cooperative learning, which is going to be part of our next lesson. Outline goals and participation roles. Make sure every student has a role inside the group they are working with. Okay, so far this is what I wanted to share, and I hope this information is useful for you and the process that you are carrying out along this subject. Remember, you have to write your reflection, and that's going to be probably for the date I already assigned you. But if you need more time, just let me know so we can arrange, move the date a little bit more further in the calendar. Okay, guys, have a nice week. Sorry for the inconvenience again, and I hope this short lesson resulted useful and meaningful for each of you. Have a nice weekend.